fifth graders. Welcome to week 5 of remote learning. This is our math lesson. Today in math, we're going to focus on how do you convert metric units. All right, so our goal for today is that you will learn how to convert one metric unit to another. As you know, we are not doing our typical visual learning bridge. We will use this Edpuzzle video as our visual learning bridge to see some examples and try some out. So let's get started. To begin, we are going to discuss the term measurement. Measurement is the action of measuring time, weight, height, temperature, length, speed, and many more things. Units of measurement allow us to be precise when measuring things. So we could say that something is tall or short, or he is tall but he is short. But we need measurement to be precise. Well, how tall is he, or how short is he? So measurement will help us be precise in giving those answers. Next, we need to discuss some different units of measurement. Depending on what you're measuring, you will use different units. To begin, we're going to discuss metric units of capacity. Well, what is capacity? Capacity is a measure of the amount of liquid a container can hold. So if we look at this water bottle, when it is full with water, it is full to its capacity. How much water can it hold? What is its capacity? We're going to focus on two different units of capacity. So two common metric units of capacity are the milliliter and the liter. And abbreviations for these: milliliter looks like this, liter looks like this. To help you understand the difference between a milliliter and liter, I'd like to discuss a few examples. A milliliter is very small. It's about 20 drops of water. So we use milliliters when we measure things that are not very large, don't have a lot of liquid to them. Liters are a little bit bigger. A liter is the size of a large water bottle. So let me show you just a couple of examples here. So here I have an empty liter water bottle. Here it is in comparison to just a normal sized water bottle. So a liter is a little bit bigger than a normal sized water bottle. So this is used for measuring large amounts of liquid. A milliliter, remember, is very small. It's about 20 drops of water. So I filled this eyedropper with water. If you can see, it only goes up to that line. That's about 1 milliliter, a very small amount. So milliliters are pretty small, liters are pretty big. Other than measuring the amount of liquid that a container can hold, we can also measure an object's mass. Mass is the amount that makes up an object. So for example, this larger elephant's mass is much larger than a smaller elephant's mass. There are 3 common metric units that we use when we're measuring mass, and they are milligrams, which is abbreviated this way, grams, which is abbreviated this way, and kilograms. And again, it's abbreviation. To help you understand those units a little bit better, I want to provide a few examples. Milligram is when an object is much smaller. There's not a whole lot to it. So for example, think of a pill like an Advil or a Tylenol. They're very small. There's not a lot to them. So we would most likely measure that object's mass using milligrams. Then we have the gram. The gram is slightly bigger than the milligram, but it's not too big. Think of a gram is equivalent to 1 grape. So think of a grape, the size of a grape. That is 1 gram. So we would use that for objects a little bit bigger than things measured in milligrams. But then we have a kilogram. A kilogram is used for measuring the mass of much larger objects. This is a picture of a cantaloupe. 1 cantaloupe is equal to about 1 kilogram. So milligrams are the small ones, gram kind of in between, and then we've got kilograms made for much larger objects. The last unit of measurement I want to talk about relates to length. Length measures how long or tall something is. So there are quite a few metric units that we use when measuring length. Some of them are millimeters, there's its abbreviation, centimeters, cm, decimeters, dm, meters, m, and kilometers, km. To help you grasp the size of those different metric units of length, I'd like to go over a few examples. The first three I'd like to discuss are millimeter, centimeter, decimeter. A millimeter, if you think about a ruler and you think about the centimeters are very, very small. So here we have a zoomed up picture of a ruler. This is 1 centimeter right here. The little lines in between, there are 10 little lines in between. You can see this space is not very big. Those are millimeters. So that space right there from 0 to that first tick mark right there, that is 1 millimeter, very tiny. Think of 1 millimeter is like the tip of a pencil. That's how big it is. It's very small. So millimeters are used for measuring small objects. A centimeter, as you can see with the zoomed up ruler, is also really small, but it is bigger than millimeters. And then we have the decimeter. A decimeter is equal to 10 centimeters. It's not very big, but it is bigger than a centimeter and a millimeter. So millimeters are used for teeny tiny objects like the tip of a pencil. Centimeters are also used for measuring smaller lengths. And then the decimeter is 10 centimeters. So it is much larger, still not too big though. The last two I want to go over are the meter and the kilometer. So we learned that the millimeter is very small, centimeters are still really small, decimeters are getting a little bit bigger, but these two are much larger. A meter, to kind of help you imagine that size, think of a guitar. The length of a guitar is about 1 meter. So that's much larger than the decimeter I was talking about, right? That's getting pretty big. But then we have our biggest one, the kilometer. That's used for measuring much longer lengths or distances, like a bridge. You might measure the length of a bridge using kilometers. It would make more sense to measure it with kilometers compared to, say, millimeters. So we've got millimeters being our smallest, centimeters, decimeters, meters, kilometers, in that order from smallest to biggest. Now that we've reviewed some different units of measurement, I hope that was a quick refresher, and we're ready to move on to our math focus today, which is converting measurements. So what does that mean? Well, convert means to change. So we will practice changing from one unit to another. So to give you a quick example, I'm going to go back to that decimeter example. We learned that there are 10 centimeters in 1 decimeter. So you could count these out one by one and say, yeah, there are 10 centimeters. But if you know the conversion, that 10 centimeters is technically the same thing as 1 decimeter, you could also refer to it as 1 decimeter. So 10 centimeters is the same thing as 1 decimeter. They're equivalent to each other, and we're going to practice converting today from one unit to another. So for example, from centimeters to decimeters. There are a couple of rules to follow when converting measurements. If you need to convert from a larger unit to a smaller unit, you always need to multiply. You will make the number bigger, and multiplication is all about making numbers bigger. So for example, 1 liter is equal to 1,000 milliliters. So if I go back to my example here was my liter, right? And then we had the milliliter of water, which wasn't a lot. It would take 1,000 of these before this water bottle was full. That's a lot of milliliters, right? So when you have a big unit being changed to a small unit, you know that it's going to take a lot of the small unit before you even get to that big unit, right? It's going to take a lot of milliliters before you even get to a liter. So whenever you have a large unit and you want to change it to a small unit, you know it's going to take a lot of the smaller unit. So you will have to multiply, because multiplying always makes numbers bigger. The second and last rule we need to discuss is when you want to convert from a smaller unit to a larger unit. So if you need to convert from a smaller unit to a larger unit, you need to divide. You will make the number smaller, and division is all about making numbers smaller. So for example, we know that 1,000 milliliters is equal to 1 liter. like we've been referring to. It would take 1,000 of these before we got to a liter. So if we started with 1,000 milliliters and I wanted to know how many liters that would be converting it from a small unit to a large unit. And you can see it would take a whole lot more milliliters than it would liters, right? It's only 1 liter compared to the 1,000 milliliters. So as you can tell, we went from a big number to a small number. So whenever you go from a smaller unit like milliliters to a larger unit like liters, it doesn't require as much, right? So whenever you go from a small unit to a large unit, we know the number is going to get smaller. So to make it smaller, you need to divide. So to go from a small unit to a big unit, you divide. Today I'll be providing you with a tool to help you with your conversions. So it's sometimes tricky to memorize all of those things, like 1,000 milliliters is equal to 1 liter. Maybe you've got that one down now because we've talked about it. But once you get through all these different metric units, it's sometimes hard to memorize these. So today I'll be providing you with this tool to help you with your conversions. So let's jump in and try a problem out. Here's our first one. 2,350 milliliters is equal to blank liters. So we need to figure out how many liters is equal to 2,350 milliliters. So the first thing you're going to want to do is look at your units. So we're going to go from milliliters to liters. Milliliters are small, liters are big. So we're going from a small unit to a big unit. Whenever you go from a small unit to a big unit, you know that it's not going to take as much of the big unit. This number should be a lot smaller than this one. So when you go from a small unit to a big unit, you divide. So I'll just start by writing my division symbol down. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is just pull this number down. So we've got 2,350 milliliters being divided by, well, how many liters? This is where we're going to use our chart. So on the chart, I want to find the one that deals with milliliters and liters, since those are the two I'm switching back and forth. So it's right here. 1,000 milliliters is equal to 1 liter. This is the one I want to focus on. Not these ones, right? Those are milligrams and grams. These are millimeters and centimeters. That doesn't relate to this problem. We want the one that deals with milliliters and liters, which is right here. So we're going to divide by 1,000. We don't want to divide by 1 because that would just give us the exact same answer. It won't have changed it at all. So we're going to divide by 1,000. So I'll write my 1,000. And then when you look at this problem, this is a very large division problem. There is a trick to this, and we did learn this earlier in the school year. You might have forgot, so hopefully this will be a refresher. So to do this kind of problem, we can use a zeros trick. So if we look at our divisor, 1,000, there are 1, 2, 3 zeros. So technically what I could do is move the decimal 3 times. Decimal, what do you mean? This doesn't have a decimal. Well, technically, yes, it does. So maybe you remember we talked about this. Every whole number technically has a decimal. We just don't always write it. It's always right there, right? So I can move that decimal 3 times, and then I'll have my answer. Well, which way do I move it? Do I move it to the right 3 times, or do I move it to the left 3 times? Remember, this is division. Division is supposed to make numbers smaller. So I don't want to move it to the right because that's going to make a really big number, and I know my answer is supposed to be small. So I need to move it to the left 3 times. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. It needs to go right there where that comma is. So instead of the comma, I'm going to change that to a decimal. So it would be 2.350 liters. And that was how you would convert 2,350 milliliters to liters. All right, I want you to watch another example so that you get the hang of this. So here's our next problem. 140 centimeters is equal to blank meters. So to begin, look at your units. We're going from centimeters to meters. Centimeters are small, meters are big. So we're going from a small unit to a big unit. Whenever you go from a small unit to a big unit, you need to divide. So I'll write my operation first. Next, I will pull down my number here, 140 centimeters, being divided by what? that's where we'll use our chart. We're going to want to find the one that deals with centimeters and meters. So if we look at the chart and we scan it, I can see right here is the one I want. 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters because we want to focus on centimeters and meters. Centimeters and meters. So I'm going to divide by 100. Again, we don't want to divide by 1 because that would just still give me 140. So we're going to divide by 100. Okay, so I'll write 100. Again, this is large division, so we can use that zeros trick to make this a whole lot faster. So if we look at the divisor, 100, there are 2 zeros. That means I can move the decimal 2 times. So again, 140 technically has a decimal right at the end, and I want to move that decimal 2 times. So to make it small, because I know my answer needs to be small because we are dividing, I'm going to move the decimal to the left, not the right. That would make the answer bigger, and I need it to be small. So I'll move it 2 times. So 1, 2. The decimal needs to go in between the 1 and the 4. So my final answer would be 1.40 meters. I'll have you guys watch me solve one more problem before you try one out yourselves. So here's the next one. 18 milliliters is equal to blank liters. So the first thing you're going to want to do is look at your units. So we've got milliliters, and we need to change this to liters. So we're going to go from a small unit to a big unit. Anytime you go from a small unit to a big unit, you know there aren't going to be as much of the big unit compared to the small unit. It won't take as much. So whenever you go from a small unit to a big unit, you know that this answer will be slightly smaller, so we need to divide to make that smaller. So I'll pull down the 18. So we've got 18 divided by what? This is again where we need to use our chart to find the one dealing with milliliters and liters. So if we scan the chart here, here's the one we want to focus on, the milliliters and liters. 1 liter is equal to 1,000 milliliters. So we are going to divide by 1,000. So I'll go ahead and write out 1,000. Again, this is large division, so we will use our zeros trick. So if we look at our divisor, 1,000, we can see that there are 3 zeros. 1, 2, 3. So we are going to divide by moving the decimal 3 times. So if I pull my 18 down, I'm going to move that decimal 3 times. So here we go. 1, 2, I can still move 3. Decimal needs to go there. And if you remember, even though we moved it over, sometimes that happens and you just need to annex a 0, right? So our final answer would be 0.018. And if I want to properly write that, I might even put a 0 there in the ones place to show that technically this is smaller than the number 1. This is not even equal to a whole liter. Now that you've watched me solve a few problems, it's your turn. So here's your problem. 1,800 grams is equal to blank kilograms. So you're going from grams to kilograms. Grams are small compared to kilograms. So you're going from a small unit to a big unit. You're going to want to use this chart, find the one that deals with grams and kilograms, and then convert your final answer. All right, let's see how you did. So whenever you go from a small unit like grams to a big unit like kilograms, you know there won't be as much of the larger unit, so this will be a smaller number than this one. So when you go from a small unit to a big unit, you need to divide. So if we write our problem out here, we are going to use division. So I'll pull down the 1,800. And then we need to divide by what? That's where we'll use our chart. So this chart shows that 1 kilogram is equal to 1,000 grams. So if we have 1,800 grams, we want to know how many kilograms that is. So we're going to divide by 1,000. So that is a large division problem. So to help out, we can use the zeros trick. So I will look at my divisor and count the number of zeros. 1, 2, 3. And now I know I'm just going to move the decimal point 3 different times. So remember, the decimal is always at the end. And because we're dividing, we know this is supposed to be a small number. So to make it small, we need to move to the left 3 times. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. So it needs to go in place of that comma. So then our final answer would be 1.800 kilograms. All right, here's your next problem to try out so that you can get really good at this. 62.9 meters is equal to blank kilometers. So you're going from meters to kilometers. Meters are smaller than kilometers, so you're going from a small unit to a big unit. You're going to want to use your chart, find the one that deals with meters and kilometers so that you can convert 62.9 meters to kilometers. All right, let's check your work. So you were going from meters to kilometers. Meters are smaller than kilometers, so we're going from a small unit to a big unit, meaning we need to divide. So if I set my problem up here, I can start by adding the operation, which is division. I'll pull down 62.9, but now I need to figure out what I'm dividing by. That's where we'll use our chart. We're going to find the one that deals with meters and kilometers. So if I look at my chart, I can see that that is right here. 1 kilometer is equal to 1,000 meters. So we are going to divide by 1,000. So I can go ahead and write my division, finish that off. And now, because it's a large division problem, I can just use my zeros trick. So I will look at the number of zeros in the divisor, which is 1, 2, 3. Now I know I can move the decimal point 3 times. So 62.9. So I need to take this decimal and move it 3 times. And I want to move it to the left because division is when answers are much smaller. It makes things smaller. So to move it left will make it smaller. And we need to do it 3 times. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. It needs to go right there. So in that blank spot, we know that we need to annex a 0. So the final answer would be 0.0629. And to properly write that, I can even add a 0 in the ones place to show that it's a very small number. It's not even 1 kilometer yet. So far, all of the problems we've looked at have went from a small unit to a big unit. So what happens if it's the opposite of that? So let's explore a few examples. So here's our first problem. 1.52 meters is equal to blank centimeters. So to begin, look at your units. So we're starting with meters, and we need to change this to centimeters. Meters are much bigger than centimeters, so we're going from a big unit this time to a small unit. And we know that it's going to take a lot more of this small unit to make the big unit. That means this answer is going to be much bigger because it's going to take a lot more of the small unit before you even get to the big unit. So this number is going to be bigger. So whenever you go from a big unit to a small unit, we know it's going to take a lot. So it's going to be a big number. And if we want a big number, we don't want to divide, we want to multiply. So that's our operation. So I'll pull this down. 1.52 being multiplied by what? So again, we're going to go back to our chart, find the one that deals with meters and centimeters so I know what to multiply by. So if I look at my chart and I find the one that deals with meters and centimeters, I can see it's right here. 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters. So now I know I need to multiply by 100. So this is a large multiplication problem. So technically we can still do that zeros trick just like we were doing with our division problems. If we look at the divisor, there are 2 zeros. So I can move the decimal point 2 times. So 1.52, we're going to move it 2 times, but this is where it's slightly different. I don't want to move it to the left because that will make a really small number. And when you multiply, numbers are supposed to get bigger. So instead of moving to the left, I'm going to move to the right, and I'm going to do that 2 times. So here we go. 1, 2. It needs to go right after the 2. So technically that would look like this. 152 and a decimal. But we don't usually write numbers like that when they're whole numbers, right? We just don't even write the decimal. It is technically there, but we don't need to write it that way. So the final answer would be 152 centimeters. All right, I'm going to have you watch me do another one very similar to that. So here's the next problem. 650 liters is equal to blank milliliters. So I'm going to start by looking at my units, liters and milliliters. So I need to change from liters to milliliters, a big unit compared to a small unit, meaning it's going to take a whole lot more of this small unit before I get to the big unit. So I know that this number will be large, which means I need to multiply. So I'll pull down 650 and I'm going to multiply by what? So I'm going to look at my chart to find the one that deals with liters and milliliters. So if I look at my chart, I can see it's right here. 1 liter equals 1,000 milliliters, so I'm going to multiply by 1,000. So I can write down 1,000. And again, large multiplications, so I'm going to use my trick to make this a little bit more easier on me. There are 3 zeros. So I need to move the decimal 3 times. So if I take 650, I know the decimal is technically always at the end. I need to move it 3 times. And since this is multiplication, I know the number is supposed to be getting bigger. If I want it to be bigger, I need to move to the right. So I'm going to move it 3 times to the right. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Decimal needs to go there. So technically, in all of those blank spots, we will annex some zeros. So we'd still have 650, but now we're going to annex 3 separate zeros. And I'll put a comma there. I could put the decimal there, but it's just a whole number, so it's technically the same thing, so we don't need it there. So 650 liters is equal to 650,000 milliliters. Now that you've watched me solve a few in this way, it's your turn. So here's your problem. 0.4 centimeters is equal to blank millimeters. So you're going to change this from centimeters to millimeters. You can use your chart to help out with this, and then we'll check to see how you do. All right, so let's check your work. So the first thing you should have done is looked at your units, centimeters and millimeters. You're going from a big unit to a small unit. Whenever you go from a big unit to a small unit, you need to multiply. So we can start by writing our operation down. So 0.4 multiplied by what? That's where we'll use your chart to find the one dealing with centimeters and millimeters. So if we look at the chart, I can see that's right here. 1 centimeter equals 10 millimeters. So we need to multiply by 10. So I can write times 10. All right, we can use that zeros trick again. So 0.4, I know I need to move the decimal just the once because of that 1 0. And since it's multiplication, I know the number is supposed to get bigger, so I need to move the decimal to the right. So if we move it once, it needs to go after the 4. So technically your answer would look like this. Well, that's a little odd. You're just showing that there's a 4 in the ones place and nothing in the tens place. So technically, if there's nothing in the tens place, you don't need that. And you don't really need a decimal after the 4 because this number is the same thing as just 4. So 0.4 centimeters is equal to 4 millimeters. Let's have you try one final problem before this video wraps up. Here's your last problem. 94 grams is equal to blank milligrams. So you're going to change this from grams to milligrams. So use the table to help you convert that measurement, and then we will see how you do. All right, let's check your work. So the first thing you should have done is looked at the units. Grams to milligrams. Grams are bigger than milligrams. So you're going from a big unit to a small unit. Whenever you go to a big unit to a small unit, it's going to take a lot more of the small unit. This number should be big, so we will need to multiply to make that happen. So multiplication is our operation. We'll pull down the 94, and now we need to figure out what do we multiply by. So we need to look at the chart to find the one dealing with grams and milligrams. So if we look back at that chart, I can see that's right here. Oh, sorry, nope, right here. I could have thrown you off there. 1 gram is equal to 1,000 milligrams. So I need to multiply by 1,000. So I'll put my 1,000 here, and I can use that zeros trick again. So in the number 1,000, I can see that there are 3 zeros. So if I take my number, 94, I can move the decimal 3 times, and it needs to be moved to the right to make it bigger. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. So it needs to go right there. So we just pull down that 94, and in those blank spots, we would just need to annex 3 separate zeros. And then we'd put our comma. So technically it's 94,000, so we don't need that decimal, and it would still be 94,000. So 94 grams is equal to 94,000 milligrams. All right, fifth graders, that is how you convert from one metric unit to another. I hope you've got the hang of it, and you can now log into Seesaw and try out your activity to show me that you've got the hang of it.